Hello, my name's Ben,
And my name's Josh.
and welcome back to FPL Graduates. Welcome back to another video. The deadline is already just around the corner for managers ahead of Gameweek 27. Tuesday night deadline, so don't forget to do your teams. Without further ado, remember to hit that subscribe button first, and let's get into Josh's team.
Okay, then. So, yeah, rolling round into this quick turnaround of Game Week 27. The assistant managership is finally over. 3 game weeks done. Decent outcome for myself. Obviously, I had Oliver Glasner last week with that 20-pointer. It's the best case scenario that I could have wished for, so can't complain with that. It's gave us a massive green arrow from about 600k just inside to 350k. So almost half my rank last game week, which was massive. You do expect that though, obviously, when using your chips, you're expecting real big rank rises. But yeah, really, really happy with that. Going into this game week, I am planning on using a free transfer, which I will come to. I currently have 2 free transfers at the moment. And then obviously I've got quite a bit of cash in the bank due to using, well, I had Arnie slot and then Glasner, so there's still a bit of cash remaining. Pickford starts in goal. Brentford away this week. Obviously, I gambled on that double Everton defence last week against Manchester United. Felt quite hard done by. Man United, I think, accumulated zero point 0.4 xG in that game. So until Bruno Fernandes put that free kick in the bottom corner, I was thinking the clean sheet was coming in. Obviously, United came back in that game, but I think Everton in general defensively are a solid defence to have in your teams, especially with their fixtures coming up, including the blank game week. Trent's next, Newcastle at home, another clean sheet for him. He seems to be ticking over rather nicely, so I'll be trying to keep hold of him up until game week 29. I'll keep him for that Southampton game. What I will say for these Liverpool assets, though, is that there could be a chance of rotation in that Southampton game due to the PSG Champions League games being the week before and then the week after that game. So something to bear in mind. I don't think I'll be rushing to bring in Liverpool assets at the moment. But again, you're probably going to need some bench coverage potentially if there is some rotation there. Levi Colwill is up next, Southampton at home. I do not rate this Chelsea defence whatsoever, but against Southampton, I think most teams have a chance of a clean sheet. So he'll be there this week over Anthony Robinson, which is a bit of an EO play as well. You know, Colwill, if he does get a clean sheet, is going to be quite a big green arrow compared to Anthony Robinson, who's, 30-40% owned at my rank. Gabriel is last up. Forest away at the moment. I am tempted to bench him, to be honest, just because I have Chris Wood in my team. I think Forest in general at home are a much better side. Arsenal, just the last 2 performances, one against West Ham, obviously they lost, but even the performance against Leicester, it's just not looking good from any point of view, in my opinion. So, yeah, obviously it's a high EO to go against, but I'm at the point now where I think, I could chase down some decent rank by just swapping him for Robinson or Mikalenko, either of those fixtures. Obviously, Robinson got the better attacking throughout the 2. Probably won't do it, despite saying all of that, but it is a consideration going into the deadline, hence why I've gone over it. What's the thoughts on the defence, Ben?
Yeah, not a bad defence. Obviously, not an ideal spot to be in this game week, but there's a lot of difficult fixtures this week for a lot of managers. So we're not going to sort of all have what we want in terms of a defence, but you have got the good coverage on probably the most likely clean sheet out of all of them in Levi Colwill, although that's never guaranteed with Chelsea. And yeah, I probably wouldn't bench Gabriel just on the sort of set piece threat, etc. And having one Arsenal defender is probably good enough coverage anyway. But yeah, all in all, fairly sort of decent start with your defence.
Okay, then. So on to the midfield then. We've got Cole Palmer at first. He's on the vice-captaincy as it stands against Southampton at home. I don't know how he didn't return against Aston Villa at the weekend. He had so many chances. He had that almost like one-on-one where the goalkeeper's not even in goal and he managed to fall over. Just not really ticking at the moment for him. I think it's like 6 game weeks without a direct goal involvement, which is kind of crazy, or 6 games anyway, including the FA Cup. So, yeah, on that basis, with the form of Mo Salah, I will not go against Salah. I think a lot of people will, and I don't mind it if you do. But for me, I just don't think Cole Palmer outscores him, to be quite honest. So that is why he's on the vice. And Bumo's up next. Obviously, a lot of people went differential and captained him. He obviously matched Salah last game week. Everton at home. It's not as easy a fixture. I think, it'll be an interesting game, to be honest, between Everton and Brentford. Both decent sides at the moment. But for me, yeah, decent asset to hold. I think I will be looking to probably ship him on relatively soon, though. Maybe even before the blank, all depending on who I want to get in. I think Jarrod Bowen is someone who's definitely cropped up into my thoughts. Atara is up next, Brighton away this week. bad news for Atara owners with seeing Evan Nilsson on the bench last week. Obviously, they got that red card, which saw Atara, I think, playing left back at points of that game against Wolves. So, yeah, I think we will still see some Atara minutes. Will it be down the middle? I don't think so, personally. I think that we could see him out wide, maybe even at left back, who even knows. So, yeah, probably not looking a great pick in the long term, but equally, I don't think they're going to rush Evan Nilsson back. So it might be a case of sort of managing the minutes of Evan Nilsson. Could see us some good minutes of Dango. We'll have to wait and see. And obviously, yeah, as I touched on, Mo Salah, just a joke of a player. To think that I went the first 10 to 15 game weeks without him this season is just crazy. He's had an absolute monster year. Newcastle at home. I think a lot of managers went against him when he was away at Newcastle, and he burnt a lot of managers for the captaincy. So I expect that to probably happen again at Anfield. They still need to keep the pressure on as well. There's no sort of letting off, even despite being 11 points clear. So I think, yeah, sticking the armband on him again for this week should be good. What's your thoughts on the midfield, Ben?
Yeah, don't mind the midfield at all. Of course, not ideal in terms of what Cole Palmer's doing at the minute. It's one of those ones where he is good enough that we will see sort of an uptick in form, and the fixtures should hopefully breed that for him. And Burmo's an interesting one. Like, I think for me, I've just brought him in myself, and I'd say in the longer term fixtures, I completely agree with that. In the short term, I think, for a player that's looking at playing in 29, it's worth holding on until at least then and going from there. Dango Atara is an interesting problem that I think will crop up in 2 to 3 game weeks. But for managers playing FPL and not playing their free hit, you've almost got to completely blindside and ignore that problem until it crops up, which is one of those ones where you got to pretend it doesn't exist until any benching and stuff happens, because you're going to want regular minutes. So let's just see what happens there. And yeah, Salah's definitely going to be the best captaincy pick. Newcastle do concede chances, a lot of goals in their games all the time. So yeah, I'd say sort of the best captaincy option there for your team.
Okay, then. So, yeah, to round off the team, then we've got our forward line. We've got Chris Wood up first. He's only blanked once in the last 8 game weeks, which is absolutely fantastic. Faced Liverpool in that time as well. So, goes to show that he can score against anyone. He's not just like a flat track bully. I think Arsenal at home and City at home in the next 2 are fine fixtures for me. I'd be happily starting him in both of those on penalties. It's just not something that I want to bench, to be honest. And I think due to these fixtures, his EO will drop a little bit, which should be nice if he does get any returns in those games. Alexander Isak up next, obviously coming off that brace against Nottingham Forest. Liverpool away this week. It will be interesting. Obviously, a lot of players, I think, sold Isak because he had an injury in the previous fixture earlier in the season, and he obviously scored that worldie at St James's Park. So hopefully he can do something similar at Anfield. And then Mateus Cunha is the potential transfer in this week for João Pedro. Obviously, a massive 12-pointer last week from him. Thank you very much. I will be shipping him on, though, for Mateus Cunha. This transfer is like 99% locked in at the moment. Just sort of waiting until close to the deadline in case any other problems crop up. But yeah, I feel very happy bringing him in. Obviously, we discussed him in transfer targets yesterday. Really nice fixture in that blank game, week 29. Decent fixtures before, very good fixtures afterwards. I think he'll be in a lot more teams going forwards. On the bench, just to touch on it, obviously Morgan Rogers is first. Crystal Palace away this week's not a bad fixture. I just think in general, obviously he took that knock as well against Chelsea. I think, a bit of a risk maybe going into this game week. And also I think since the additions of Asensio, Rashford, Marlon, he's not really, I guess the burden's not as much on his shoulders for that attacking output. He can play a little bit deeper, link the play a bit better. And I think that's why we're seeing not as many FPL attacking returns anyway from him. And equally, Rompton and Mikalenko. If I had a decent keeper this week, that is not a bad bench boost in my opinion. But obviously, I will be saving that for game week 33. What's your thoughts on the forward line, Ben?
Yeah, the forward line is looking strong. I can see the rationale behind the João Pedro to Cunha sort of transfer. Of course, some managers who own João Pedro may not have the luxury of being able to do that just based on sort of the game at 29 plans, etc. So it's a nice position to be in terms of your forward sort of planning, etc. So yeah, I don't mind it at all. And the Chris Wood sort of fixture is not too bad either. Of course, the temptation to bench Gabriel comes off the back of that. Sometimes you can sort of negate the risk by having both of them, or you can sort of go sort of eggs in one basket on one. Yeah, in terms of the bench, I agree with the Rodgers benching decision. Like, of course, we saw him go off with a little bit of a potential injury, precautionary measure potentially, but we just don't know yet. So we'll just have to wait and see on any news on Monday. But yeah, all in all, it's a fairly strong team and fairly well set up for the next 3 game weeks. Okay, so moving on into my team, and we're off the back of a 100-point game week. So we are, in fact, at 179k in the world. So we're a little bit better than the 200k now, which is fantastic. Again, just like Josh, pretty much half the rank, which is really good to see. And both of us moving sort of up in the rankings. In terms of my team, I've got 2 free transfers and 0.8 million in the bank. Again, I was very certain on free hitting in 29. Now I think I can probably get away without it, just based on sort of a couple of the double game week fixture announcements that we've had over the last few game weeks. So we are looking ahead to sort of trying to get through 29 without using any chips, which means I'm going to have to be very, very careful with what transfers I make over the next couple of weeks, and maybe be a little bit patient in making those transfers as well, which is not ideal, but it's the way that I'm going to have to play it over the next 3 game weeks in order to sort of keep up with what everyone else is doing. So yeah, in goal we've got Raya and a double up in defence of him and Timber. It's not ideal, but I don't own Chris Wood, so I'm happy to double down on the Arsenal defence this week. The risk is there, absolutely, but the upside and reward could be huge. That will be, in my opinion, the difference between a green arrow and a red arrow this week. Just that fixture on its own. So it'll be interesting to see what comes with that. Of course, like Josh said, Arsenal not looking too great at the moment, but we have seen previously them come up pretty tough against those toughest to play against teams. And, at this point in the season, Arsenal have to get results, and the pressure is on them to do so. So I imagine they'd almost be sort of scared to lose at that point, and maybe put in a sort of decent defensive performance. We got Trent Alexander-Arnold in there as well, which I'm fairly happy to own for this game week. Liverpool seem to be on a roll. Do I anticipate a clean sheet? Probably not, but I anticipate hopefully some attacking returns. And then Mikalenko is third there. It's the best of sort of the bad bunch that we've got in terms of defenders left. It's a decision between him, Lewis Hall, who's got Liverpool away, which is not ideal, or Harwood Bellis, who's got Chelsea away. At the moment, I'm on Mikalenko. Could I go to Hall? Potentially, but of course, like, no matter what, I'm going to have a bit of a conflict in terms of, the attackers in my team and the defenders. So that's not ideal at all. One of the first thoughts that came into my mind was potentially a transfer out of Lewis Hall that would facilitate another move elsewhere. Haven't really thought about who that would be to bring in. Of course, it'd be someone that there could be a case of bringing in Levi Colwill from Chelsea because the fixtures are decent. Ryan Ait-Nouri is definitely an option as well for me. But Josh, that's the defence, and what's your first initial thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's the right thing to do. Obviously, you're not going to own Chris Wood this week, so I would 100% double down if I was in your scenario on that clean sheet. Arsenal aren't a terrible defence. It's the going forward that's the problem for them at the moment. So, yeah, there's definitely a chance of keeping a clean sheet there at Forest. Trent, obviously, is Trent. I think even if he doesn't return this week, it'll be, not too bad considering how well he's played in recent weeks. Mikalenko, for me, I'd be playing pretty happily. You're covering off Pickford ownership, which is really high at the moment. A lot of managers seem to be going on to him. Obviously, I have myself. So, yeah, it's almost like a coverage there as well, especially in this sort of game week where, to be honest, I don't really anticipate too many clean sheets. I think, a lot of clashes in attackers versus defenders this week. The same relates to my bench as well. So, yeah, for me, I'd probably just play Mikalenko. If Brentford don't find the net that day, you're going to be happy either way.
Okay, so moving on into the midfield, and just like Josh, I've also got Salah on the captaincy, fairly happy and set with that. No sort of real thoughts on moving it elsewhere. Cole Palmer on the vice captaincy, a good fixture, but poor form, of course, as we spoke about as well. Brian Mbeumo, I brought in last week for Ismail Assar, which is an 11-point positive variance on that transfer, which is fantastic. Bringing in someone who plays in 29 and bringing someone in who called was definitely sort of fantastic. And then Dango Tara, as we spoke about again on Josh's team, is a medium term, problem that I hope won't sort of come to fruition. And let's see what happens. Let's see if he can get past game week 29. That would be ideal for me. If not, we're looking at potentially a hit going into that game week, which, is not ideal. But again, I accept that a lot of managers are going to be taking hits going into that game week, so it's not the end of the world. Josh, very similar midfield to how yours is looking.
Yeah, the exact same, I think. So yeah, same sort of issues. I think Atara is the main one. The biggest issue with him is that there's no one around the same price that is, a good enough option to move to. You're going to need at least 500,000. So that's probably something you just got to put into your contingency going forwards. Having a bit of spare cash just in case the worst is to happen. I think though, with the ideas that you've got a couple free transfers saved. You should be pretty all good going forwards.
Okay, so moving on into the strike force and then into sort of the plans that I'm looking at. We've got Alexander Isak up top, of course, more than happy to keep him through, and probably going to be one that I keep even in sort of Game Week 29. João Pedro, again, one that's come off the back of a haul. So I'd like to think that he starts again against Bournemouth at home. Not the best fixture, not the worst fixture, but a fixture that I think João Pedro can score in. We've seen him sort of score against the tougher teams so far this season, so I hope he continues that trend. Like I said, I think I'm resigned to having to keep him going into game week 29. Again, it's not ideal, but it's a great sign that he got 90 minutes, he scored, got an assist, looks very decent. So hopefully he can carry that forward and, become the main man again for Brighton. And then Cody Gakpo got some minutes off the bench for Liverpool in the game week against Manchester City, which is fantastic news because I was sort of hoping that he would be available, and that sort of strengthens my opinion. I think he will start against Newcastle. It's a very important game for Liverpool to win off the back of beating Manchester City. So I do believe that he will be starting, and that gives me enough confidence anyway to start him in my team instead of selling. And then, of course, if we're looking to the bench, Morgan Rogers is one that's yellow flagged at the moment, so we'll have to see on that. Lewis Hall and Harwood Bellis. So what I'm wanting to do is hold off making any transfers really this game week and hoping to sort of build up 3 or even 4 free transfers going into game week 29. It will then give me as much information as possible. If any injuries pop up, I can deal with them. As well as sort of knowing that if I did make transfers early and then those players got injured in the next 2 or 3 game weeks, I'd be sort of kicking myself for that. So in my situation, I think I'd go with a suboptimal team for the next 2 game weeks to try and make sure that I have the most optimal team possible for a game week where a lot of chips are being used. So Josh, that's the thoughts. Like I could go Rodgers to someone like Pedro Neto or Mohamed Kudus. Nothing standing out too much to me at the moment, which suggests potentially doing nothing. What's your thoughts on my situation in terms of transfers?
I think, yeah, the strategy that you lined out there is perfectly sound. I don't think I'd be rushing into any moves at the moment, particularly like the midfield bracket. Like we've mentioned a couple of times now, sub 6 million is just really difficult to find someone who you can rely on, like we have done throughout the whole season, for someone who's going to be giving us decent output. I don't mind João Pedro this week. Obviously, I will be selling, but I don't think it's a bad pick at all. Like we said, obviously Bournemouth without Zabarnyi, we haven't seen them without Zabarnyi all season. So he's, a key asset for them at the back. I think it will cause problems for them. I don't necessarily see Bournemouth keeping a clean sheet against Brighton, particularly being away from home as well. So, yeah, I don't mind him at all. I think there's a good chance that he does return this week. Cody Gakpo will be interesting. Obviously, the minutes aren't assured there. I think another problem is that the fact that Liverpool are playing this like box midfield almost, with obviously Curtis Jones and Szoboszlai both playing against City. It happened as well in their last game before that as well, which means even more limited minutes for these attackers that we see with Nunes, Jota, Diaz, Gakpo. There's a lot of options there. So it'll be interesting to see if they revert to that again against Newcastle or whether they go back to their sort of original formation that they've been using over the season. It should be interesting. I think Gakpo, though, if you do own, you probably do keep and just hope that he gets the minutes in that Game Week 28 fixture versus Southampton. Okay, then, so that wraps up our Game Week 27 team reveals. Lots to go through, lots of strategy coming up on the horizon. Obviously, loads of chips will be getting used in the near future. So make sure you stay subscribed to learn what we're going to be doing with those chips and obviously giving you guys help as well.
Yeah, absolutely. A big few weeks of FPL action coming up. As always, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe to the FPL graduates. I've been Ben.
I've been Josh.
And we'll see you guys
next time. Have a good game week, everyone.
So you may rise, but you'll never make me wanna stick around you.